This is Juston Case of America Newscape. Please join author Jerry Sander and myself here to provide a preview of Jerry's new book, Convergence. Hello, Jerry. Welcome to America Newscape.
Hi, Justin. Great to be here.
You know what? When we look at your book, first question that comes to my mind was, what was your inspiration for the story?
There were multiple sources of inspiration. There's this kind of general craziness going on in the culture in a number of ways. And I was still working in a high school when I started it, and I started realizing that kids were not having the ordinary teenage experiences that I associated with teenage experiences, and many other generations did. The ordinary frustrations and challenges and excitements of being a teenager and making contact with each other. And sometimes it worked out and sometimes it didn't. Instead, they were just staring at their hands. They were holding phones and they were literally bumping into each other in the hallways because they were texting other people. And I started seeing a whole generation that was not connected with the people right in front of them, but connected with people somewhere in some way. And that was long enough ago now that those people have become in their 20s and in their 30s. And I'm starting to see them in my private practice. I see couples, I do a lot of couples therapy. And there are some essential social skills that have just been different and differently evolved than previous generations. So that was one source of inspiration. The other was kind of events in the world and the rise of fundamentalism and the feeling of helplessness. And so you had a decrease in democratic governments, it seemed like, and an increase in invasive technology and a rise in violence and fundamentalism and people getting upset with that. So I just let myself go as an idea with what happens in the future. What happens 20, 30 years in the future? If people start getting really sick of this stuff, will it be too late? And that was the source of the inspiration for the story.
I think, we all harbor a lot of those feelings, Jerry. After reading the points of view presented in the book, that technology is utterly destructive to whatever makes us human. Could you please expound on that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, obviously that's a little bit of hyperbole because things like the telephone and automobile, these are obviously been amazing inventions that have helped people. But I think we have crossed a point. I hope it's not of no return, but we seem to have crossed a threshold by which we're sort of chaotically connected. Theoretically, we're connected, and yet people feel less present than ever before. And that is a destructive thing. That's truly a destructive thing in our social environments, in our families, in our community, and in our country. I found a lyric that I guess I'm allowed to quote lyrics, even if they're copyrighted, right?
Absolutely.
And it was a Leonard Cohen song that he wrote in 1992, I think, 95, about the future, how he saw the future, and he called it the future. And he wrote, things are going to slide in all directions, won't be nothing you can measure anymore. The blizzard of the world has crossed the threshold and it's overturned the order of the soul. So that's pretty precisely what I was writing about. What happens when our technology crosses the threshold? We're addicted to it, we've committed to it, and we're not connected in the most meaningful human ways anymore. And I added another element, which is that the United States goes out of business. It decides to merge with the world's largest search engine company and some remnants of the stock market. And that's your new government. It's not called the United States anymore. It's called the Triumvirate. And it's kind of hardly noticed it's passing because they keep the benefits coming, Social Security, things like that. So that was part of the conceit of the book too.
So they'll buy our loyalty in essence.
Yeah, I used to think the early dystopian novels like 1984 and Brave New World all kind of had the government using technology to get in your lives and take you over, right? And I've come around to thinking it's the opposite. It's the technology was just going to take over the government and perhaps do a more efficient job than the government could do, because everyone seems to love or be addicted to their technology, whereas people are very divided about their governments.
That's very, very true. Another thing you touched on that the perception of the negative impact of these video games that the
Yeah,
teens and even the younger children are playing,
yeah.
it's frightening.
Well, some people aren't frightened by it. The people who are frightened by it give me hope. But the people who are just very used to it, I tell you, there's a kind of person to watch out for, all right? The person who's going to say, hey, it is what it is, okay? And that's a person who's kind of given up hope. Yeah, I sat on a panel years ago of a number of us. I was the mental health professional, and there was a policeman, and there was a student, and there was a parent, and we all watched Grand Theft Auto. This was when Grand Theft Auto 2 was started. Now they're on like 5 or something. It's like the hugest game of all time, made millions or billions of dollars. And we were watching things like the player steal a car and run down a policeman in the street, and score points for this. And I asked the policeman if it made him upset or nervous or feel bad to see it. And he said, no, not at all. It's just a game, And he enjoyed playing it himself.
Oh my God.
And the person at the newspaper was asking me, are you saying, Mr. Sander, that you think this video is going to cause violence? I don't think it was going to cause people to, steal cars and rob and run down policemen. But I do think it caused a general decrease in sensitivity, that things that would have upset people very much in previous generations just became, oh, well, and just with the general increase in violence in the media and immediate availability of all kinds of online pornography to any 11-year-old who has a cell phone or any other piece of technology, suddenly we're in a different world. And I allowed myself to go, 20, 30 years into the future in that different world and ask the question, is it possible that future generations of young people might actually get upset with this technology being in their lives and in them? I don't know.
Let's hope they do. Do you seriously believe things are headed towards a revolutionary tipping point?
I believe there's a tipping point coming, and I don't know exactly what that will look like because it'll be determined by people who get sick of the things we've given them. It's important to know that some of these really cool new inventions that were from your generation and my generation, we're pretty fascinated with them. But they're legacy hand-me-downs to a young generation. They're not young people invented stuff. And so I believe that young people may come around to feeling there's got to be a better way than just consuming what our older generation handed to us.
That's a remarkable theory. It's as if they don't have enough skin in the game to appreciate what they have.
And I thought back to the 60s a lot, when the book cover designer asked me kind of what I liked for looks of books and stuff, we reached back to the 60s And I let myself remember what some of the feeling in the air was like in the 60s and 70s in terms of perhaps change is coming and all things are possible. And I don't think it's inconceivable that in the future, young people will reference that time period.
I have to agree with you. You know, what really makes you an expert about gaming technology, Jerry, and teens in general?
I don't. I'm terrible at gaming. In fact, my son tried to teach me Batman Arkham Asylum once. He was saying, "Hey, Dad, get with this gaming stuff," and I couldn't get Batman out of the corner. He kept walking into the corner and slamming into the wall. So I've never really been a gamer, or I'm the opposite of an expert in that. Which, as a novelist, that gave me freedom to imagine how would I create an ultra violent game. There's a game in my book that is unleashed on the world called Hell on Earth. How would I design it? How would you rope kids into becoming addicted to playing it? And what would the implications be of it? So probably because I'm no expert in it, it freed me up to be a writer about it, if that makes any sense.
No, it
I didn't
actually
worry
does.
about getting it wrong. Yeah, I didn't worry, oh, I'm getting this detail wrong.
You didn't you didn't waste any time on the start button, more of the theoretical
No,
aspects of it. Okay.
nah. It's a novel. So
Okay. How are people to how are people to become connected if not through technology?
I think it's a risky thing to be vulnerable enough to reach out to another person. It can be something as small as calling him up and asking him to go out for coffee. Um, it's scary anytime you reach out to another person because you can be rejected. So I think we have to go back to old in-person things. Um, I I formed a writing group, and we meet once every 2 weeks, and we're all writing different kinds of things. And we've come to love each other's writings, even though we wouldn't write each other's books. So that's an in-person, face-to-face thing. That's what I'd vote for.
I I agree with you. There is a harsh portrayal of religious fundamentalism in your book. Does this make
Yeah,
it anti-religious?
no. Um, here's another thing. Hold on. You can edit that out if you want.
No, I like
Get a product endorsement. This is a
it.
Spindthrift Lemon, our sponsor for today.
Okay.
Um, religion. Uh, I think I realized that I had this conversation once with someone, and I said, I think there's about 18% of people in every religion in the world are very good spiritual people who you'd really love and trust. And those 18% have so much more in common with each other than with the other 82% of their own religions. So I've seen, and you've seen, religion be a force for incredible tenderness and connection and good in the world, and an incredible force when it's in the hands of fundamentalists, of destructive things and oppression and attempts to control. So it's a force. It's a force in the world. And I put that in my book too. What happens when that force emerges and what happens when people react to it?
Wow.
Yeah.
Where exactly is the hope in this dystopian novel?
I think the hope is in the younger people. The hope is when young people can start believing that the future is not determined and is not part of any technology or system, but is in their hands. That's when they become powerful and the ones in charge. I think that's hopeful. And I also have a love interest in the book, because to me, if you can find one person to connect with in this world and do it and make it effective and keep it going, that's a major piece of beauty right there. Makes you very lucky.
I agree with you. I think a lot of our days we can judge what type of day we had, whether or not we accomplished that. You know, and
Yeah,
what the watchers don't realize is you and I made initial contact via a, a telephone,
yeah, yeah.
not a text message,
Right.
not an email. We actually spoke on the phone.
That's
And
true. I kind of forgot that, how unique that is. You know, it was about 10 or 12 years ago now that I talked to kids who never used their phone to talk to people on the phone.
yeah, when I first called you, Jerry, I was shocked that somebody answered.
I try.
Okay. Hey, this has been a wonderful experience. You know, this has been Justin Case and Jerry Sanders sharing
Thank you, Justin.
a glimpse into convergence. Thanks for joining us. Please remember additional information and links are provided in the videos. Read more. To support your authors everywhere and consider subscribing to this channel. Thank you.
Excellent.